Okay, I want to quick talk about a particularly odd camera moment that really reminds me of that moment at the end of 2001, which has to do with POV shots. Which again, I mentioned this, but when a character is when a character looks at the ground, the camera shows the character looking at the ground, and then the character shows. So let's pick this. So I'm looking down at the ground like this, and then the camera shows something, little orange topped thing there, and then it comes back like this. When that happens, we understand that language, right? When they show the thing, when they show someone looking, and then they show an object on the ground, you understand, oh, that's what they're looking at. And then Kubrick likes to play games, like in 2001, he kind of fucks up that moment where it becomes confusing. Is that a person looking at that thing, or is it just the camera on its own so that only we're seeing it? And it gets weird in that last sequence there, where he sees his sort of he looks at his older self, and then suddenly he is the older self, and the person looking is not there anymore, which is very confusing. There's something similar in this movie where Kubrick has a scene of Danny is seeing. There's a scene where Jack goes to check out the famous scene where Jack goes into room of 237 and sees the old woman in the bathtub, or sees a beautiful woman in the bathtub who turns into the ugly old hag. And he sees. Then we have Danny, who's having like this kind of psychic thing, because there's a moment when it's Danny's freaking out, and you sort of see the camera go into the bathroom, and it's like that's Danny's perspective. Like he's sort of, it's a sort of swoopy. He's like psychically looking in the bathroom, but then suddenly a hand appears on screen and opens the door, and you realize, oh, that's not. I thought this was Danny sort of remembering or thinking psychically about that space, but then it turns out no, that's actually Jack entering into space. But then they cut back to Danny sort of, freaking out. And it becomes, well, wait a minute. Is this Danny seeing Jack go in the bathroom, using his psychic powers to kind of spy on Jack in the bathroom? But also, he's contacting Halloran. And there's an image of Halloran's face where Halloran's at home in his bed. And so it's unclear, but it feels like it's Danny giving a vision of what's happening to Jack in the bathroom to Halloran. In which case, what we're seeing is we're seeing Halloran seeing Danny seeing Jack seeing the witch. I think I did that pretty clearly. Yeah, okay, all right. We're seeing Halloran seeing Danny seeing Jack seeing the old lady in the bathtub. But it's a very complex moment, and if you watch it shot by shot, you'll see how confusing it is, because at first you're like, oh, this is Danny looking. Oh, it's Jack. Oh, it's Halloran. We're communicating with Halloran, the danger in the hotel. So yeah, okay, cool. I think we're doing pretty good on that, and I think good. All right, we're doing good. So now I think it's time. Let's talk about acting a little bit and character. Yeah, we got time. We're doing good. So acting and character. Do I want to say that? I could talk about costumes. Wendy and Danny are both wearing red and blue at the beginning of the movie, and it links them. It means they're like together because they're wearing the same colors. I don't know. It's not that interesting. Okay, I don't care about that. Let's talk about acting. Jack Nicholson gives the performance of his life. It's one of the most famous movie performances. Here's Johnny. It's a famous performance where Jack is just like really acting nuts. He has a very kind of overwrought production thing. He's crazy. Now, one of the things, and we'll talk. Well, I don't necessarily want to spend a lot of time on the differences between the book and the movie, but the book and the movie are quite different. They're mostly similar, but they have some really key, crucial differences. One of the differences is that in the book, Jack seems like a regular guy who slowly starts to degenerate into the hotel kind of, he becomes this terrible person. Jack Nicholson, when he's playing the character Jack, seems a little crazy at the start. He doesn't have a psychological journey to go. He's a little like nuts in the interval. Yeah, it's wonderful. He's already in that here's to 5 miserable months, which that became a COVID meme about people having to trapped in isolation for 5 months. People started putting that image on their Facebook page. So Jack, he seems a little nuts at the beginning. He doesn't seem to care that the previous caretaker axe murdered his whole family, and he's a little crazy. He's an odd person. On the way up, Danny asks him about the Donner Party and cannibalism. Um, and Jack tells him, "Oh, this was a famous group of people in the mountains who got stranded and ate each other." And of course, this is while taking his family into the mountains where they will be the only people up there. Um, but you can see in Jack Nicholson's performance, he's happy to talk about cannibalism. He learned it from the television. He's very excited to talk about he's very excited about it. So there's something, he enjoys cannibalism, and he's a little fucked up right at the beginning of the movie. So he has sort of less far to go. Some people have criticized Jack Nicholson for this because they feel like if his character's already crazy, it should be a movie. One of the things we look for movies is for characters to change. And some people have had the complaint that Jack doesn't really change that much. He seems already pretty murderous when he gets there, or pretty crazy when he gets there. So when he goes crazy, it's less of a journey. It doesn't bother me, but it bothers some people, and I just thought you should know about it since it's a sort of a question of acting. I mean, his eyebrows do all the acting. And you can see, if you're familiar with the Batman movie, exactly why Jack Nicholson was selected to play the Joker in the 1989 Batman movie. He's doing all the Joker things from the 1989 Batman movie that you'll see in that. He's doing it in The Shining already. It's obviously why he was selected for that. Cool. Okay. Let's talk about Wendy's acting, because she is that scene where she talks to the doctor about how Jack broke Danny's arm is truly one of the greatest pieces of acting I've ever seen. It's an amazing piece of acting because she is able to tell a story that sounds reasonable with the words she's using, because she talks about how, well, the kid, he was on the floor playing with the papers, and Danny, and Jack grabbed his arm just, a little too hard, and it, hurt him, and he promised he'd never do it again. And it's been really good because he, stopped drinking for 5 months. He's been sober for 5 months, and it's really wonderful. And reading the script, it's a straightforward story about how this was a bad thing, but it was just an accident, and Jack's actually better for it, so maybe he was lucky in a way. But the way she tells it, you can see that's her rationalization. Like, Jack is actually a dangerous guy who injured her child. He injured their child. And that she's covering for him, but she knows it's worse than that. She knows it's a bigger problem. My favorite detail in this scene that really communicates that is they're smoking cigarettes. And she holds her hand up like this with a cigarette, and she tells the whole story, and the cigarette burns down, and the ash is like this long. Normally, when you get a little ash on a cigarette, you tap it out on the ashtray, tap it out on the ashtray, tap it out on the ashtray, right? That's what the ashtrays were. What's happening here is that she's telling the story, and she just holds the cigarette in her hand up here, and she just never smokes it. It suggests somebody who is concentrating so hard on making this story, which is bad, sound okay, that she has forgotten to smoke her cigarette altogether. She's forgotten to smoke it, she's forgotten to tap it out, because she's concentrating on telling the story exactly right, because if she tells it without thinking about it, it's going to be clear to everybody that her husband abused her child. Abused their child. So it's an incredible thing. It's also emphasized by the reverse shot where you see the social worker just kind of stares at her. And it's also emphasized by that hard edit. And that was that closing day. It's a very sudden edit that just puts a hard stop. It's a disturbing stop to a story that was a little disturbing to begin with. And she's trying to make it sound as nice and pleasant as possible, but it isn't, and she can't really cover that up. It's an amazing piece of acting, and I love it. Okay, cool. I'll see you guys in the next video.